everybody. It's great to be here today for the session entitled Work Programs That Work at ASA. My name is Mindy Fehlbaum, and I'm the Vice President of Workforce Programs at AARP Foundation. For those unfamiliar with AARP Foundation, we are the charitable affiliate of AARP, and at AARP Foundation, we have a bold goal of ending senior poverty. To activate on this goal, we spark and implement innovative solutions and programs that help vulnerable older adults build economic opportunity, critical social connections, and conduct legal advocacy to work towards systemic change. These bold solutions help to foster resilience, strengthen communities, and restore hope for low-income 50-plus individuals. In our mission to help older workers increase their economic opportunity, even during these challenging times, AARP Foundation offers numerous programs and services that support low-income older workers at every stage of their employment journey, and offers solutions to help unemployed and independent workers chart a course towards financial security. In this session today, you'll learn more about the Foundation's workforce programs that I oversee from my colleagues who are program leads for the Senior Community Service Employment Program, CSEP, Back to Work 50+, and Work for Yourself at 50+. And you'll learn about how these programs equip low-income older adults with the resources, know-how, supports, and training they need to obtain a good job. At the heart of everything we do is a focus on equity and increasing equitable outcomes, particularly those individuals 50 and over that have faced systemic racism and discrimination. So let's get started, because today's session comes at a critical time for low-income older workers, as there is a fierce sense of urgency to find innovative and impactful ways to help low-income 50-plus workers get on the pathway to a high-quality job, given the economic and health impacts of the pandemic and the acceleration of technology that's changing the nature of work in the workplace and leaving many workers behind. So with that, I'd like now for my colleagues on the panel to quickly introduce themselves and share a brief introduction of the AARP Foundation's workforce programs that you lead. Let's start with Devin Hearns, who's the National Director of CSEP. Devin?
Greetings, everybody. Like Mindy said, my name is Devin Hearns. I'm the National Director for the CSEP program here at AARP Foundation. We operate in 19 states, and Puerto Rico have 115 offices, and we are the largest CSEP provider for the Department of Labor in the country.
Great. Lori Strauss, who's the Program Manager for Back to Work 50+. Lori?
Thank you, Mindy. At Back to Work 50+, we help unemployed older workers combat age discrimination by helping them gain the skills and the confidence that they need to compete for in-demand jobs. We offer online workshops and coaching by professional coaches through our national online program and through local providers who customize our program for their local labor market. We have rolling enrollment for job candidates, and we've left a flyer in the resource section that you can download and share with any job candidates that you might be working with in your communities. And we plan to recruit new providers later this year.
Great, thank you, Lori. Anna Montaigne is the Program Manager for Work for Yourself at 50+. Anna?
Hi, everybody. As Mindy said, my name's Anna Montaigne. I run the Work for Yourself 50+ program, which really introduces self-employment opportunities to low-income older adults. We do so in two ways. The first is through workshops hosted by entrepreneur support organizations across the country, as well as through the Work for Yourself at 50+ Freelancing Resource Center, which helps older adults navigate the gig economy. And also, as Lori mentioned, we also have resources about the program attached to this event. So if you want to learn more about it, you can go download our public report there.
Great. Anna, I hear a little feedback. I'd now like to introduce Cynthia Fernandez, a former Back to Work 50+ participant. We want to welcome you, Cynthia, and thank you for being on the panel today, as we believe it is so important to have your voice and others in our program so that we can get a great perspective on how to design our programs that meet the needs of the community as well as older workers, and not just what we might perceive the needs to be. So really excited to have you here today, Cynthia. So if you could take a few minutes to introduce yourself and briefly share with us your employment journey and what led you to Back to Work 50 Plus and ultimately a job.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Cynthia Fernandez, and I'm here in Houston, Texas. I started as a hospitality worker with the Marriott International Hotel chain back in 1993. And I worked for them for almost 27 years until I was furloughed back in March of 2020 due to the pandemic. I was put on furlough twice, first in March 21st. It was supposed to be up until July 13th, supposedly supposed to go back to work at that time. But in June, I was issued a second letter via the mail and was told in that letter that the furlough was going to be extended till October the 2nd. And it kind of concerned me at that time. I said, well, this thing's not looking very good right at the moment. So I decided I might as well just try and see what other employment opportunities would be out there. So sure enough, by August the 26th, I received the phone call, as well as my other former co-workers, that our position at the hotel was officially eliminated. So it went from a furlough to permanent unemployment. So at that time, I had joined the AARP Back to Work 50 program in July, and I enjoyed it. I learned a lot of new things and how to write resumes and things like that. But also at the same time, I went ahead and looked for employment on my own as well. So I was still doing that and still trying to participate in the Back to Work 50 program, learning the tips and everything that they had taught me. And also in January of this year, I decided to join another program called SIR, Jobs for Progress, to update my skills. And that included updating my skills with computers and updating my skill with my keyboarding skills, and also how to use PowerPoint and Google Slides, for presentation, which I had never done before in my other previous job. So that program lasted about a month, and it ended on the first weekend of March. So fast forward to February the 23rd, as a matter of fact, I received an email from Methodist Hospital. They were offering me a temporary position for a health screener, which includes taking temperatures of people coming in to visit their loved ones in the hospital. And they decided they wanted to offer me that position temporary. It was good pay. The only drawback is that there's no benefits with this position because it's temporary. So as of right now, I'm enjoying that position and learning new skills, which I've never learned before. Some of the skills that I was using in my hospitality job before is applying very well and adjusting very well to the position that I have now. Everything is great right now, for right now.
Terrific. Thanks for sharing your story, and we'll continue on as the session goes on, Cynthia. Mm-hmm. So let's get started. I mean, Cynthia already talked about the impact a little bit of COVID, but let's talk about the topic in general, because we've been living it for the past year. But the pandemic, as we all know and we've witnessed, has really wreaked havoc on the economy and the employment prospects, really for all people of all ages, but it's particularly hard for low-income 50-plus workers. Roughly 1.1 million older workers age 55 plus exited the workforce between August 2020 and January 2021 due to the pandemic. And the decline of employment during COVID for Black, Hispanic, and Asian older workers, and for those lacking college degrees, were more than twice that of white older workers. Many of these workers impacted by job loss worked in occupations and sectors that rely on in-person interactions, such as hospitality and retail. We have really seen that sector and the job losses mount, which many older workers, low-income older workers, are part of the sector and jobs, and women, Black, and Latino are disproportionately represented in these sectors. At the same time, it's really important to note that 16.1 million workers, older workers, continue to work during the pandemic in essential industries such as healthcare, many risking their lives at the same time ensuring the continuity of critical functions and infrastructure in our country. So we don't know what the long-term economic effects of the pandemic are yet, but we do know that unemployment for older workers will force many of them to retire early, involuntary or early retirement, worsen their financial well-being, and exacerbate financial disparities already experienced by women, people of color, and those without college degrees. So with that context of COVID, which we've lived with for the past year, it would be great to learn more about the programs and how you've responded to the pandemic, the challenges, and what opportunities have emerged during these times. So with that, I want to ask each of you, how you've interacted with employers, older workers, or strategic partners during this changing COVID working environment. Lori, would you like to start off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mindy. At the beginning of 2020, we started an online coaching program for Back to Work 50 Plus. And one of the things that was most important to us was to continue to find ways to help older workers engage with employers in meaningful ways. And the challenge was that we were operating at a national level, and so we needed to be able to engage with employers who had national connections. So we created bi-weekly employer spotlight webinars where employers present their companies and the job opportunities to the Back to Work 50 Plus candidates via Zoom or whatever platform the employer was allowed to use. And then we provided a template outline for the session and recorded the session. And then we kept that content on our learning management system and created a class essentially about that employer for our job candidates. So anybody who comes to Back to Work is able to learn about what that particular employer is looking for. And they also know that those employers are specifically interested in recruiting older workers. This year, we've engaged CVS Health, and I see Barbara Honig is on this webinar. Hi, Barbara. We also engaged Sleep Number, face-to-face fundraising agencies, and the 5-Star Contact Center. And we're continuing to build more and more of these types of relationships so that we can have a broad range of employment opportunities and employers that our candidates can research.
Great. Devin, I think you're on mute.
I was on mute.
Okay.
Started talking without pushing mute. I mean, that's the staple of the pandemic right there. Mm-hmm. But I would say for us in CSEP, the biggest challenge we had was the shutdown and the transition away from the host agency piece, and then trying to engage with the participants after that. A primary piece of the CSEP program is the host agency experience, and that's a lot of our participants' lifeline and their connection to the outside and the community. So when the pandemic first happened in early 2020, that was removed. And what ended up happening is we really sprung into action to develop techniques and processes for us to stay in contact with the participants, to not only provide training, but also just to see if they were okay. One of the primary ways we did that was we created an early alert resiliency survey. It's called EARS. And what EARS allowed us to do was hear what was going on with the participants in the field in relation to not only their training needs, but also what's going on with their housing, what's going on with their food, any type of medical needs, and also just providing a reliable information source for what was going on in the pandemic. In those early parts of the pandemic, it was information flying from everywhere, and we wanted to make sure we had a reliable way to maintain contact. So that EARS survey was a primary method for us to really get into our participants and stay in contact with them. And we did that through technology. We used email, and we also used text messaging to reach our participants and be able to collect information on how they were doing and then relay that back to make it really actionable, so we were able to actually meet the needs of participants during the most critical parts of the pandemic, where information was rare and resources were closing down. The double-edged sword of the host agency environment closures really also impacts their ability to receive resources, because those nonprofits that were shutting their doors were also lifelines to other needed services. So we became that lifeline in the CSEP program, and the EARS survey allowed us to do it. We later branched out into staying in contact to keep them engaged because of the lack of the host agency experience. We now went to a remote type of training piece that also allowed us to keep the participants engaged during that time. So it wasn't just downtime and they weren't just there, but they were actually able to have a viable training option provided to them during that period. So we were pretty successful in making sure we got to talk to all of our participants during the pandemic and solved a lot of problems for them during that time. We're really proud of that.
Great. Anna, do you have some words of wisdom around the engagement?
Over the last year, we have worked really closely with our partner organizations who are predominantly small business development centers and women's business centers. We host monthly community of practice calls with all of our partners at the same time to understand what programmatic challenges they're facing, but also to understand what trends they're seeing with their clients locally, both older adults as well as the general population. And what we found was that for most, at least in the beginning of the pandemic, most of them were overwhelmed with the Payment Protection Plan program and helping existing business owners get the money they need to survive. But as the year went on, there was more bandwidth to focus on aspiring business owners as well, or aspiring entrepreneurs as well.
Great. So what challenges did your programs face during the past year, and give some examples of how you overcame those challenges? Devin, would you like to start?
Sure. As I mentioned, we were really focused on trying to maintain engagement with the participants. So our provision of training became a challenge, because a lot of our participants did not have either the technical know-how or the actual equipment to be able to participate in online or a lot of virtual services. So it really, we had to dig deep to find ways in which we were able to not only mitigate that problem for them when we could, but provide training to those where it just wasn't an option to get them online to where they could get to emails or be able to use the computers. So we used, again, myriad of technologies in a way to be able to provide training in a cadre, if you will, so that we were able to provide digital literacy training to participants that were close to or in a position where they could take advantage of it, but they weren't able to do it. And then for the participants that did not have any technical ability, we again leaned on our technology and multimedia meetings room spaces to create non-technical options for trainings where participants could actually call in and receive information and training in a group setting, a class virtually taught via the internet, but allowing participants to call in audio, which gave us the opportunity to provide training to participants during the pandemic. And that was a huge challenge. I mean, nobody anticipated the pandemic to go on as long as it did. In the early months, I was one that was noted to say that, it'll be over next month. So we just be ready to go. And here we are a year later, and we had to pivot. We had to come up with the ways to be able to address that challenge gap, that technology gap that the participants had. And our provision of training was, again, something we're pretty proud of, and we're going to continue to do as we move forward.
Great. It sounds like you really pivoted and really took advantage of the skill development opportunities and other opportunities for participants. Lori, would you like to weigh in on some of these challenges?
She's on mute.
You're on mute, Lori.
No, sorry, my turn. So for Back to Work 50 Plus and for Work for Yourself, one of the things we were most proud of is that we were providing face-to-face, intensive community building experiences for people who didn't often get those chances in their lives or in their communities. And then suddenly with COVID, all of our partners ended up starting to work from home. And that meant that the things that were really key to how we supported them and how they supported job candidates went away. So one example is both of our programs have print guides that are toolkits that we provide to our participants, and we would have them give them out at the workshop. And so because we worked for AARP Foundation, we were very quickly able to switch that and use our fulfillment process to be able to send those materials to our participants in the mail. And so that was huge, because that meant that we were serving people all the way through the process by getting the materials at their door. The second thing that we both did was pivot from providing workshops and additional support in person to online. And so we both learned how to use webinars, learned how to use Zoom, and then we both learned how to do it ourselves. And then we also taught what we learned to our partners. And we helped our partners think through how to present online, because it's a real different skill set. It's a different way to organize yourself and organize your approach. And so we